Hi, it's good to be back with you for week 5 of Sweeter Than Chocolate, Hebrews 11. I hope you had a great week of study. This week we did a whole lot of legwork on the history of Israel and Judah, didn't we? We haven't had quite as much application as it's been a week of biblical historical foundations. And I know that some people's eyes kind of glaze and roll back in their heads when you start talking history or geography or anything where they have this reaction in their brains where the only thing they can think of is boring. I tell you, that absolutely breaks my heart when people shut down in the face of some of the biblical basics because they have a presupposition that they're either too complicated or too boring. I see people all the time who never get to the application, who never get into the Word at all because they're scared off, and particularly scared off by the Old Testament. And this is why, even though you've studied much of this in your lesson this week, I want us to drive the basics of the division of the kingdom home here today in our video segment. Some people learn better by reading, some better by hearing. So if you're already solid on this, please accept my apologies, but we are going to run over this for those who aren't because it is so important in getting a grip on the Old Testament. And if you don't have a grip on the Old Testament, you're going to be hamstrung in handling the New Testament too. Now, those of you who already have this down cold, I'm so proud of you, and you can just chalk this one up to review, okay? As we've been looking at the heroes of the faith and Old Testament history up to this point, it's been relatively simple. What we've had essentially is one plot line. We started at the beginning with God, who created Adam. We've then followed his descendants, starting with Abel and Seth, and moving down through Enoch, Noah, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. With Jacob, we see the birth of the nation of Israel, and the storyline begins to follow this people group. We see them enslaved in Egypt, delivered from Egypt, wandering in the wilderness under Moses, and eventually entering the promised land under Joshua. And as they begin to possess the promised land, the rule moves to a series of judges. We see different players on the scene, but everything is very linear as a progression of main characters move on and off the scene. When we hit the time of the kings, however, everything changes. And for a lot of people, the text starts getting hard. And there's a reason for that. And it's this. During the time of the kings, we shift for a time from one basic storyline to two. And not only that, we have more than one historical account of the time period of the kings, as the book of Kings and the books of Chronicles overlap in a lot of their material. And then there's more. We also have some of the prophets bringing messages during the same time frame. So this is why it feels a little crazy at times. But here's the deal. If we can understand the basic framework for each storyline, then we can go back and start understanding how and where the prophets fit in relationship to all of those. Stick with me. I promise you're going to be okay. And since we've already jumped into the deep end of the pool today, I'm going to go for broke here and throw in a little geography too. And I know if I were older and wiser, I'd probably rethink this decision, but hey, we're going for it. And here's where I wish we weren't doing this by video, because I'd really like to be able to look into your eyes and make sure that you're participating right now. So I'm going to have to trust you on this one, but if you're in a group, you do have my permission to be the participation police with your friends, okay? Now, before we go back and unpack the kings, I want to get you situated with your geography. And I'll bet you've never realized this, but on the palm of your hand is a reasonable map of the nation of Israel. Now, to see this map, you're going to hold your left hand up with your palm facing you. You can do this with your right hand too. You just need to make sure that your thumb is facing to your left. Now, I'm going to hold it up and you're going to see it in the same way you'd be seeing your own. All right, I'm guessing a lot of you aren't quite seeing what I'm thinking yet, but here you go. The country of Israel, when you look at the shape, right, coming down here, it's approximately like my hand is. Over here by my thumb is the Mediterranean Sea. That's the border of the western side of Israel. Egypt, of course, is down here in this area. Along the outside of my hand here is the Jordan River, or as we like to say in Chicago, the Jordan River, as in at guard, number 23 from North Carolina, Michael Jordan. Yes, we're still stuck in the 90s up here in regard to basketball. But that's just how it is. Now, you may have just rolled your eyes a little if you're not a Bulls fan, or a lot if you're not even a sports fan, and that's okay. You don't have to like Michael Jordan. You don't have to like the Bulls. But whenever you can find a memorable hook, you use it. And this hook becomes more memorable when you say it like you mean it. Okay? Now, I've never been a fan of geography, and to be perfectly honest with you, what helped me learn biblical geography in the first place was teaching the precept upon precept course on the book of Joshua. Following the children of Israel into the promised land and plotting their progress on a map as they came into the promised land and began to take possession did wonders for helping me feel comfortable with the geography of the land of Israel. So if you want to get a better overall handle on geography, that would be a great course to put on your list. Now, did you know that Israel is only about the size of New Jersey? Which makes you wonder why it is that we find the geography of this particular land so hard to learn. Well, one of the reasons is that we're talking about not only the land, but the passage of time. Cities change hands and change names. The land belongs to different people. Cities exist and then they're destroyed or they're named something different. It just gets all mixed up. So, unlike, say, the United States, which is pretty easy to get a handle on, as it's only been around a couple hundred years, Israel is tougher because we're looking at a much greater span of time. Because of this, when you're starting out, I think the best thing to do is to at least get a handle on some of the things that don't really change. So today, in addition to just getting you to understand that Israel's kind of like the shape of your hand, and getting just that basic lay of the land there, I'm going to teach you 5 of the important bodies of water in the Bible. Okay? Now the first 3 rhyme. And if you go to Israel, you can buy yourself a t-shirt with them on it. And if you've ever been there, you probably know the exact shirt I'm talking about. The 3 that rhyme are the Med Sea, the Red Sea, and the Dead Sea. Now the Med Sea, right over here, is short for the Mediterranean. It's also called the Great Sea. The Red Sea is more down in this area in Egypt and a little off the map. The Dead Sea, over here on this side, is also called the Salt Sea. It's towards the bottom of the Jordan River. And the final 2 are the Sea of Galilee, which is up toward the top of the Jordan River, which is actually a freshwater lake, and of course, the Jordan River. So when we go through it, it goes like this: the Med Sea, Red Sea, Dead Sea, Sea of Galilee, and the Jordan River. And you really do need to say it like that just to get the rhythm. It helps you to remember. Isn't that easy? All right. So that was a side road to give you just a little bit of a lay of the land of Israel. Now back to the history. I want to tell you, if you can get a handle on the division of the kingdom, you will be well on your way to untangling the Old Testament. So here we go. As you'll remember, God raises up Saul as the first king of Israel. He's king over 12 tribes, and we have a united kingdom under one monarch. Now, God eventually removes Saul and replaces him with David, a man after God's own heart. David is from the tribe of Judah, and it's from his line that Jesus will eventually be born. David's son Solomon reigns over the United Kingdom of Israel after his father. Now, up to this point, we still have this whole single storyline thing going. But Solomon does not follow God like his father David had done. He multiplies wives, and foreign wives at that. He multiplies chariots, and eventually his foreign wives turn his heart from God. Because of this, God takes the kingdom away from his son. And before we feel too badly for his son Rehoboam, we need to realize that he also decides badly. Instead of listening to the wise counsel of those who had served his father, Rehoboam listens to his buddies and tells the people he will be harder on them than his dad Solomon had ever been. And so the 10 tribes reject the kingship of Rehoboam and instead make Jeroboam king. And as you saw in your lesson, God raised up Jeroboam. So from this point forward, we now have 2 storylines going. We have one in the north under Jeroboam in the nation of Israel, and it's comprised of 10 of the tribes. We have another in the south under Rehoboam in the kingdom of Judah, which is made up of the tribes of Judah and Benjamin. In the north, in Israel, the kings are all bad, with the exception of Jehu, who does a few things right. The monarchy up there is marked by coups. There are a few dynasties that emerge, or dynasties, as I like to call them, because they were all a nasty bunch up there. They have non-Levitical priests and are marked by idolatry that comes down from the top. Now in the south, in Judah, the kings are a mixed bag. Some are bad, some are good, one very good, and one bad to the bone. But in the south, the kingship moves from father to son, down the Davidic line. There's a hiccup with a nasty queen from the north, but again, that's another story for another day. The south also has the Levites in the temple. Now, eventually, this storyline will become more cohesive again, and that's after God's judgment comes. The northern kingdom of Israel, if we use our hand, the northern kingdom up here, is going to be conquered by the Assyrians in 722 BC. And this is one biblical date to remember. And in case you're having a hard time placing Assyria, you're probably actually familiar with the capital, Nineveh, the place that Jonah did his best to avoid. When Assyria comes in, they deport most of the population, and then they resettle other people groups in the land of Israel. And they take the people of Israel and they scatter them throughout the earth. Now you'd think that Judah would learn, but they don't. And in 586 BC, which is another date to remember, Jerusalem falls to Babylon and the people are taken into captivity. Now after 70 years though, they're allowed to return to the land. So we see them coming back as a people group, whereas Israel remains scattered. So there you have it. When you understand that movement from one storyline to 2, and when you remember that the prophets bring additional perspective to each of the storylines, well, it's still a little challenging, but at least you're going to be on some firm footing for your study. Now, if you're in a group, I want you to take some time to consider how having a handle on the timeline of the Old Testament will help you as you read and study the Word. After that, I'd like you to think through your entire lesson and consider how each of the characters we looked at responded to the Word of God and how that affected the rest of their lives. What kind of application can we make from this to our own lives and how we respond to the Word of God? And before you wrap up, be sure to post your response to either or both of these questions on the blog. And now I have one extra assignment for you this week as we close out our time. I want you to explain the division of the kingdom and the map of Israel to someone. And I don't mean to just send them a link. Because it's one thing to follow along when someone is talking about something and think that you've kind of got it. But it's another thing to know it well enough to explain it. Like I told you earlier, I learned geography when I had to explain it to a class. I want to promise you I'm not going to be praying down locusts on you if you decide not to do this. But if you want to remember it, this is a great way to help it stick. So until next week, so long from me in the land of Israel.